How's it going, everybody? So in this video, we're going to be talking about polyunsaturated fatty acids, more specifically polyunsaturated omega-6, but to a certain degree, I believe that this probably applies to omega-3 as well. There's a lot of very fascinating information about polyunsaturated fats and evidence pointing towards significant negative effects, some of which I don't hear being discussed in the online communities. Now, for me personally, I don't think I really even have a video on polyunsaturated fatty acids besides maybe talking about what I thought was the benefits of omega-3 supplementation from fish oil a couple of years ago, and maybe some videos on PUFA, polyunsaturated omega-6, like probably back in the day, 2016, 2017, when I was first getting into some of the research on it. But in the recent years, there's been a very kind of popular, kind of a huge push, kind of like a lot of information coming out, lots of people getting on the anti-PUFA train. So I'm going to start with some of the things that people haven't really said much about. So, and let me start with actually the basis of what I believe. So, I haven't made videos on this because the research has been very all over the place, and I don't want to come out here talking information and talking about something that I haven't personally come to a clear understanding of, come to a clear opinion of. I don't like to release information on something that I haven't fully delved into and understood. And PUFAs are one of those things where it can get really, the waters can get really muddy, okay? So, the first things first, as far as cancer is concerned, there actually does seem to be a lot of mechanistic rationale for why any kind of polyunsaturated fatty acid could be a direct underlying contributor to the disease, the creation of pathogenic cancer. And what that means is just a tumor cell that grows out of control to the point where you can be diagnosed with a form of cancer. Okay. And I also believe that these fatty acids form an underlying, or they contribute to the underlying primary cause of heart disease as well, okay? Specifically arteriosclerosis, and I think the main reason why they contribute to these things mechanistically, okay, is because they increase the potential for lipid peroxidation and free radical damage to the cells, okay? And so what a lot of people call inflammation. So the word inflammation is being thrown around kind of like as a buzzword, and it's not inflammation. Inflammation really is a healing response that is in response to free radical damage and damage in general to the body. That's what inflammation is. So inflammation is not a problem. It's the cause. The cause is the problem. The cause of inflammation and of these diseases is free radical damage, okay? Now, things like sugar and glutamine, it's pretty convincing to me at this point that if you already have a diagnosis of cancer, look up Professor Seyfried and the Warburg effect, and look up cancer as a metabolic disease. There's a whole paper on it published by Professor Thomas Seyfried from 2014, and he's writing a book right now. I believe it's going to be released soon. Lots of lectures on YouTube explaining how once cancer's already begun, dietary glucose in all of its form, any form of carbohydrate, as well as glutamine, can directly contribute to the growth of these tumors once they've already started, okay? And so anything that's going to starve the body of glucose and or glutamine should starve cancer, according to his research. And he actually has a couple dozen case reports of putting cancer in remission using this protocol. Now, I just want to say, for those people who are into raw veganism or who were like me and have done raw veganism, you might have seen quite a lot of case reports with documentation of people going on raw vegan diets and actually putting their severe stage 4 cancers in remission as well. And in this video, you're going to understand why there are legitimate documented cases of people putting cancer into remission on these ketogenic diets with Professor Thomas Seyfried, as well as people on raw vegan diets putting cancer into remission. Okay? So here's the thing. Okay? So first of all, once cancers are, so the polyunsaturated fatty acids, okay, they directly contribute to the creation of free radicals in the body. These polyunsaturated fatty acids are stored in the body, okay, over time. And remember, they're in all the food. You can't even get real butter anymore. If you go to a steakhouse, top dollar steakhouses, and you ask for butter, 9 times out of 10, they're going to give you a vegetable oil spread. And a lot of times, these people don't even know it. They don't even realize it's not real butter. You have to ask them, are you sure it's real butter? And they'll say, yeah, it is. What do you mean, is it real butter? And then they'll have to go back in the kitchen and look at the ingredients. And they'll insist, oh, it's real butter. I'm like, hey, go look at the ingredients. And they think you're stupid. And then when they look at the ingredients, they're like, oh, wait a second. This is vegetable oil spread. You know? And imagine someone with a soy allergy, you know, and these people don't even realize you're giving them soybean oil spread and not real butter. So anyway, the point is, these polyunsaturated fatty acids are in everything. They're everywhere, and we've been consuming them without even realizing it since we were born. And there is really, they were created since the early 1900s, really populated into the food supply. And ever since then, we've seen a dramatic increase in all of these disorders. Okay, so anyway, we've been eating these our entire life. They build up in our fat cells. They build up in our bodies, and then basically, if we they contribute to free radical damage of the cells, which force our cells to go into a you could think of it as like a prehistoric or an ancient energy metabolism pathway where they start to ferment out of control. Okay? They start to, so they're dying, these cells are dying from the free radical damage from the polyunsaturated fatty acids. And the free radicals also damage the arteries, which contribute to the heart disease. And then basically, since these cells, they're dying, the whole purpose of evolution and natural selection is survival traits. According to Professor Thomas Seyfried, they go into an ancient survival mechanism that's evolved over billions of years since we are like single-celled organisms, and they start to only run on glucose at that point. Those cells. And so in order to keep themselves alive, they switch over from an oxidative metabolism into a predominantly anaerobic metabolism. And now, again, the free radical damage from the PUFAs and from carcinogenic compounds, by the way, things like cigarette smoke, environmental pollution, and all these other molecules in foods and things that have been considered carcinogenic. They're carcinogens because they create free radical damage in the body. Okay, and remember, just because something has a potential to create free radicals in test tube science doesn't actually mean it will inside the body. But anyway, so free radical damage is a main cause, and PUFAs are the primary source of these in most humans' bodies. And then once these cells start to ferment out of control, They're growing. They're hypertrophying, kind of like muscle growth. They're consuming all the glucose as well as glutamine in order to do so, and they grow out of control. And that is basically the mechanisms of tumor growth. And that's how polyunsaturated fats are at the beginning of them. Okay, they're at the root cause. And so, if you think about the two main things that people do, that we have dozens of case reports, and I bet you there's hundreds that I haven't seen yet. Some of them are published in the scientific literature, but you won't be able to find them very easily because they're swept under the rug, really. The two main protocols, actually the three main protocols. So basically anything that's going to starve your body of glutamine, of glucose, and then secondarily of PUFAs over the long term, should, based on this idea, resolve cancer over time, tumors. And let's think about this for a second. What are the main protocols people use that they have documented cases of this and that they swear will is effective for cancer? The first one, raw veganism. Most people on my channel were carnivore people, meat-based people. Well, I'm not a carnivore guy these days, but animal-based nutrition on my channel, basically. But raw veganism, brain tumors, all sorts of things people have resolved cancer on. It's no joke. But here's why. And Dr. Sebi, I've said many times, I made videos about Dr. Sebi. He has documented cases. He took it to court and won of resolving cancer on a raw fruit diet. Why did that happen? How is that possible? Autophagy is the first thing, okay? Autophagy is the first thing. You are literally starving your body of amino acids. You're starving your body of glutamic acid on a raw vegan diet. Glutamic acid is a precursor to glutamine. On a raw vegan diet, it's extremely deficient in glutamic acid and glutamine precursors and amino acids in general. It causes the body to start to enter autophagy, where it starts to break down its own cells and kind of clean out the system, let's put it that way, in simple terms. And it increases apoptosis, which is recycling of cells, especially cancer cells. So you're removing glutamine, which, as we just discussed, is a primary fuel source for tumor growth. Okay. The second thing you're doing is you're in a calorie deficit. If you look at these people, they start to waste away. If you're in a calorie deficit and you're not consuming glutamine, you are consuming a lot of glucose from the fruit and stuff, but it's less likely to actually contribute towards the growth of tumor cells. Okay, because you're in a net catabolic state where your muscle tissues are breaking down and you're losing body fat like crazy on this protocol. The third thing is on a raw vegan diet, okay, in addition to being a caloric deficit, in addition to being deficient in protein and glutamine precursors, you're not consuming PUFAs. You're hardly consuming any fat at all on a raw vegan diet. So people like Dr. Sebi and these raw vegans, okay, Dr. Doug Graham and the 80-10-10 diet and these people, they're able to reverse these cancer states because they're depriving their body of polyunsaturated fatty acids. I mean, isn't that interesting? Dr. Sebi has won court cases by reversing cancer, but all these people, they fixate on the wrong mechanisms. They say it's because the body needs to be alkaline and acidic blood and meat rots in your intestine. In reality, his protocol worked, and it has real physiological reasons as to why it would work, but these people, because they're dogmatic, they want to believe meat is the cause of all ills. They're missing key information that could have actually given them way more credibility. And no one is looking at this. Anyway, so they're depriving their body of polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are the primary contributor to free radical damage, which is a primary contributor to the beginning of cancer growth and tumor growth. And they're depriving their body of glutamine, which is a primary fuel for tumors once they've developed. They're also losing body fat. So remember what we said earlier. Polyunsaturated fatty acids are stored in the tissues. And so that's why weight loss and fat loss has such great health benefits, is because you're literally burning off those PUFAs that would otherwise be causing a high rate of oxidative damage from the lipid peroxidation. So you're stripping your body of the damaging PUFA fats. You are depriving your body of glutamine. You're not consuming any more PUFA fats. Burning fat, not eating the PUFAs that are causing it, not eating the glutamine. And any glucose that you're getting is really trying to keep your body alive. There's not enough glucose to go around and feed the cancer cell to that certain degree. And so that's probably what's going on. Not to mention because you're, depriving your body of amino acids in general, losing muscle mass and stuff like that. So you're in a net catabolic state, which increases the turnover of cancer cells. So that's very important to look at. And then, there's some of these people who, like Linus Pauling, who used to use intravenous injections of vitamin C. And that's probably due to vitamin C directly scavenging free radicals. It's taking care of the underlying contributor to why tumors start in the first place. So, yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. So let's look at ketogenic diets and fasting. So and I have a video on my channel where I interviewed my friend Jason Strappa, also known as Leukemia Slayer, who put his leukemia into remission eating a ketogenic type of diet. And it was actually high in PUFAs. But he combined the ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting. He lost like 100 pounds in like 2 months and resensitized his body to insulin. And within a matter of months, he took a blood test at his doctor's and found his leukemia went into remission when all the drugs he was on wasn't working before. And if you look at Professor Thomas Seyfried, there's a whole channel of people who combine intermittent fasting and a ketogenic type of diet to put their cancers into remission. There's documented case reports with x-rays and things. And there's also Paleo Medicina out of Hungary, who also has published case reports and literature on their success resolving cancer as well. So again, the reason why I think this works is because with these ketogenic diets and fasting, you are, if you're doing them right, you are limiting and these people are using the low protein version, right? So you're limiting amino acid precursors to glutamine, which fuels cancer growth. You're eliminating glucose, and usually on these protocols, especially with intermittent fasting, you're also causing the stripping of body fat. Okay, now if these and stripping of body fat is resolving the body's polyunsaturated fatty acids. You're removing your stores of polyunsaturated fatty acids. I think that this is why weight loss and fat loss, no matter what the diet is, even if it's just a Pop-Tart diet or a raw vegan diet, eventually leads to improved lipid profiles, improved inflammation status, improved markers of insulin sensitivity, and all these things just by losing fat. Right? Anything that's calorically restricted in the literature usually leads to improvements in health markers, no matter what it is. Like there's a McDonald's diet that the doctor did, right? And I'm not saying these things are optimal. I'm just saying that there's a lot of reasons why, and one of them could be the stripping of these polyunsaturated fats from the fatty tissue. Okay? And the mysterious disease that caused a big stir in 2020, okay, I actually published a meta-analysis showing a lot of the people who were hospitalized with it actually had a high tissue concentration of PUFAs. So that's just an interesting correlation. But yeah, so I'm gonna actually make parts of this video just so that I get more exposure on the important points. But the very first thing about polyunsaturated fatty acids I want people to understand is that the methods that work for diseases that have been strongly tied to free radical damage, reactive oxygen species, ROS. The protocols, the nutrition protocols, lifestyle protocols that work seem to be tied towards reducing PUFAs, okay? Now, I want to say one more thing, and I'll talk more in depth about it in another video. Weston A. Price. There was a whole lot of Weston A. Price people who were doing the fermented cod liver oil. And by the way, I personally love Weston A. Price because I think that Weston A. Price really, really showed what happens when populations of people who eat whole food diets and they are not eating these polyunsaturated oils. Watch the video, The Oiling of America by Sally Fullen, and they suddenly start to eat refined foods, polyunsaturated fats, and stuff like that. That these populations suddenly have heart disease, cancer, and their offspring have complete genetic deformities within a generation or so. So anyway, but these people, they were really big on fermented cod liver oil. And you'll find a lot of them, like a couple, like I think like maybe 30 or so, around there, died of cancer within like a decade or less. Like I think it was like a couple of years, like 4 to 6 years on average, after heavily starting the cod liver oil. And there were people that wanted to sue them because customers that were buying the fermented cod liver oil, which is expensive as hell, by the way, they all developed cancers that were all very similar to each other. And so I just want to say that, to me, especially when I was promoting fish oil, I didn't want to admit this. And I was like, oh, it's because it's fermented cod liver oil. Maybe regular cod liver oil is fine. And that might be the case. But there is something about that fish oil, and it probably has to do with the oxidation of the PUFAs in general, okay? To me, this is very convincing now. And so I'm going to get to some of the clinical trials and the meta-analysis and stuff that these other people start to mention in opposition to PUFAs being bad. Because there's a lot of people like Lane Norton and these evidence-based nutritionists, so to speak, who are not looking at individual differences in the evidence on a study-by-study basis, and they're just saying, oh, PUFAs are fine, because in studies where you replace saturated fats with vegetable oils, the vegetable oil group is better and stuff like that. We're going to get into that in the next video. But for now, understand that these protocols, whether it's Dr. Sebi's diet, raw veganism, ketogenic diets, intermittent fasting, it has a lot to do with the reactive oxygen species, free radical damage, damaging the arteries, damaging the cells, and then when the cell starts to get damaged, it reverts to a ancient metabolism pathway that starts to ferment out of control, over-consuming glucose and glutamine, and that's why intermittent fasting, carb-restricted dieting, as well as just general starvation, caloric restriction, and mostly depriving the body of its fuel source, whether it's raw veganism or whatever. And these people who do these great fasts, or they don't eat anything for 30 days, and they insist that they reverse their cancer, it's probably removing the fuel source to the cancer cell as well as the PUFAs is probably what's going on. And then they're losing their stores of PUFAs because they're losing crazy amounts of body fat. So leave your questions and comments down below. Check out Professor Thomas Seyfried and watch the lecture from Sally Fallon, The Oiling of America. And I'll talk to y'all next time.